Engin, thank you very much for coming here.
Yeah.
So we are excited to hear your talk, the $1 million mistake.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a lot of money.
Okay. Then, yeah. Welcome everybody. As you can hear, I speak English. This is your chance to go out now. If you say like, oh, I don't want to listen anymore on English, but yeah, I thought it would be useful to speak in English. So, title of this talk is a little bit clickbaity, so we say $1 million mistake. So thankfully, we did not have a $1 million mistake with our customers, but I want to talk on skyrocketing AWS builds. And this is really nice that Jan this morning had a similar talk, because I can just continue on this. And actually, I would more call it a DevOps here, to say, okay, we make errors, and this leads to costly mistakes. But first thing first, I need to make a selfie, because my management want to know what I'm doing in Istanbul. When I told them I'm going to Turkey, they thought it's like this. They're like, what are you doing in Turkey? And I'm like, no, it's really working, I'm working. So I want to do a little selfie and try to get you all in. And then I can show them and say, hey, that's the reason you sent me to Turkey. So, wow, thanks. That helped me to keep my job. But I still do this, so that's fine. Okay, quickly to myself. So as I said, Engin Diri is my name. I'm working as a customer experience architect at Pulumi. I like to do all the stuff, cloud transformation, cloud enablement, and continuous everything. So I started my journey with cruise control in the Java world with Ant, and I found this very interesting. And since then, I'm this person you are calling when you have a problem in Jenkins, like, hey, Engin, my build is not working. So since then, somehow it gets stuck. There are my handles. Feel free to follow me. I have, somebody told me you have to have LinkedIn because it's business and it's important and you get jobs and so on. So I have LinkedIn. And for all the stuff, I'm used normally X for sharing food and all the stuff. So that's the difference. Quickly, what is Pulumi? I'm not sure if everybody heard about Pulumi, and it really fits here. Also from the topic, what my workplace is doing. So we are modern infrastructure as code. This is very important. I hope nobody of you click-ops your way through infrastructure. We use generic programming languages to leverage this, the provisioning of infrastructure, and we work with any major cloud provider, open source and free. Okay, that's it. So let's head over to the main talk. This is the definition I looked up about shock. So what is a shock? There are two descriptions about shock. So one is a sudden upsetting experience. This is the thing we are focusing on. And the second one is a little bit more gore, medical and so on. So I'm not going into this part about a shock. It's more about the first part. So sudden upsetting events. So some examples. For example, when you forgot your son, you go on holiday to Paris, you forgot your son and realize in the plane, whoa, where is Kevin? Second example of a shock is when you find out that the person you are helping and bringing at home has a relationship with your wife. So this is the second type of shock. And of course, I would not be here if there would not be a third type of shock, and this is the AWS bill shock. So, and I'm sure after this talk, nobody at AWS will ever invite me, but normally this is how it feels when you pay your AWS bills. If you're not taking care, and if you're not visiting community events like this and listening to our talks. So, as I said, working as a customer experience architect, I have great insight to our customer project, and I can tell you, and I mentioned this also before, I would say 80% of our customers are using AWS. And then there's a long time, nothing coming. And then we get Azure, for example. And then again, a long time, nothing else. And then comes GCP. So AWS is the main driver here for our customers. And we assembled some of the reasons why sometimes AWS builds can go crazy. And now comes the part everybody hates when they join a talk. It's when the person wants to interact with the audience. And everybody's like, I got a phone call, I need to go to the toilet. So, but still, I tried this. I tried at KCD Istanbul 2 days ago, and nobody asked a question. So please, AWS folks, be nice to me. What could be a reason for skyrocketing AWS bills? Just one or two would be fine. I assembled a list of things we found out, but what would be your guesses or your experiences? Sorry, yes. Okay. Another one. Yes? Yes, absolutely. So that's the thing. So I would count this here about inventorizing and what's going on. So having no observability, that could be a thing. So what's running, who's owning the stuff. So anybody else, this is your chance. Oh, yeah, please scream. Sorry? Yeah, not having this, sorry, not having these tools or pumping everything into CloudWatch. That's true. What happened? Okay, so these are some points we found out at our customers is not monitoring and analyzing your cloud spending. This is one of the reasons. I think that goes into the direction you mentioned. Another one is, and this is really, really common, I had this at my former place, over-provisioning resources. As a developer, we always tend to get more as we need. There is a German phrase for it. I tried to translate it in English. Having is better than needing. So it sounds better in German. So yes, when we order, and especially in times where we had to go IT4U or some service tickets, it was a pain to get something. So what we always did is we doubled the capacity because, hey, you never know, because reordering stuff and so on is very complicated. And this mentality of being too careful, to not being too generous with the resources is still going on. So if you ask a developer what he needs, he will always come with the biggest machine because, hey, you never know. Or maybe he knows because he wrote the code. Neglecting, and this is also what you mentioned, neglecting an unused or orphaned resources. This happens really, really often, that a project gets run, a dev environment, whatever staging environment, and nobody destroys the environment. So this is really a big issue. Or worst case is the persons who run the environment, he left the company. So it's always like, hey, what is this VM? It belonged to Joe or whatever person. Yeah, where is Joe? Yeah, he left the company last year. Yeah, what is on this? I don't know. And then they turn it off and somebody screams because there was an important system on it. So this is also some of the points. This is also very, very interesting when you work with AWS, and you may encounter this depending on the project you are working. There are regional price differences, so it makes really sense to see if another region which still be close to your region you are operating has a better pricing. And this is something people don't see, so they go like, hey, I live in Germany, so I go to EU Central 1 because it's a reflex, or hey, I live in America, I go to US West or whatever thing. Okay, so these are some of my points we encountered with our customers. So now we come to the next question to say, okay, no interactive. I will not ask you folks, don't be afraid of this. So what can we do to prevent skyrocketing AWS bills? So there are two ways to approach this. We saw, or when you joined the talk of Jan, he really went deeply into the technical part. There's also another aspect of this. I would call it the cultural part. So now you're deciding, hey, which should I put emphasis on it, or where should I put and rework on this? And I would say it's both. You need to tackle this problem on a technical. As we saw, there are many, many ways to handle the situation technically, but also establish some cultural rails to say, okay, this is the way we're going to operate. So let me, and this is something I like more because technique changes all the time. So this time you have lambdas, you have maybe this, but next week or the week after we saw now generative AI comes up and so on. So the technical things will always change. What persists is the cultural part. So one of the things we try to establish with our customers, which is everything you see, just as a remark, sounds easy, but is really complicated. It's much, much more complicated than changing a technical part. And this is also something we engineers always go. We go for the easy way with the technical part, but then see that the cultural part is the most difficult one. So establish ownership of cost optimization. So create a team which takes care of this and gives you reports out and just is the owner of the costs, like FinOps is telling us. Some people call it a FinOps team, some call it a cloud cost center of excellence. So there is the way to create here a unit for this. So second part is also establish a partnership between finance and technology. So you have somebody you can discuss your cloud journey and say, okay, we have here a situation, how we can optimize this. Finance can come to a technology partner, to a tech team and say, hey, there's something going on here. What is the deeper reason behind this, and back and forth. So we have here the partnership. Also very important, and we have the tools also here, is establish cloud budgets and forecasts to say, okay, what we're going to build here and what is going to cost us, and then say clear boundaries to say, okay, this is the pricing we have, and you cannot accidentally skyrocket with something because you created here a budget. Another part is, sounds again very easy, but is here, implement here the cost awareness in your organizational process. So make it absolutely transparent for the people working in the project, having access to the data, having here also the accountability for the costs. It's really, really helping here to drive the awareness on the cultural part. So that should be really something to focus on. The next one is keep up to date with new service releases. So coming here to events like AWS Community Day or going to other cloud-based events helps you to see what is new. So maybe you're using a technology, maybe something which is not up to date anymore and which is excessively expensive compared to newer versions. So this is very important. And then maybe also reaching out to your AWS partners to say, hey, what's up currently? So we lost maybe the updates on new releases. This is very important. Could help you to change maybe an existing project, or when you restart a new project, that you can say, okay, we're going to choose this piece of technology. We heard, for example, Graviton, ARM, and so on. So very interesting things goes on. And of course, creating this cost-aware culture. So we always talked in the former places to say, okay, think about the company as it belongs to you and take care that you do stuff which you would do also when you pay out of your own pocket. This could be something, a very important step. And then, of course, taking care that you train the people. Again, we said what are new releases, but also in general, say, training your team on handling cloud resources is very important. So then you avoid here to trying to figure out your AWS bill, because you have a better understanding, a deeper understanding. It's completely shift left. The term was for programming, but I would say it's also important for your costs to have everything in the creation with your cloud architects where you're programming, and then you avoid this, hey, what's going on here? So another point which comes to the cultural aspect is the whole subject about frugal architecture. So what is it? It's a term lent from architecture. So that's the reason I have this picture of the building. So this is something architects, real architects, let me say like this, building houses and all this stuff, working on. And there's a definition, and I just read this now because it's really, really big. So frugal architecture emphasizes minimalism, cost-effective materials, sustainable practices, and efficient design to create functional, environmental friendly spaces. So this is something, makes sense. And Werner Vogels took this, and it was released 2023. Jan had it also on the slide because it's a really important piece, and created here the rules here from the frugal architect. This is Werner Vogels, by the way. So he created several laws, 7 laws here to say, okay, make cost a non-functional requirement, systems that last align costs to business, and so on and so on. So when you have a deeper look into this and you're already a little bit familiar with the FinOps principles, you will see that the laws of frugal architecture tie in or are comparable to the ones of FinOps principles, something we would like to embrace because we want to be cost aware. So let us take the points here again and say, okay, what is the law from the frugal architecture to a FinOps principle? So when we come and say, make costs a non-functional requirement, that could mean take advantage of the variable cost model of the cloud. Another one would be system that last align costs to business. Decisions are driven by the business value of cloud. Very important. Next point is architecting is a series of trade-off. And then there's from FinOps, I did not bring this here, please look this up, is the iron triangle of balance, cost, quality, speed. So that's something to keep in mind. Unobserved systems, somebody mentioned this, lead to unknown costs. FinOps data should be accessible and timely, so people should gain access to this. Next point was cost-aware architecture implement cost controls. We come back again, everyone takes ownership for their cloud usage. Rule number, what is this now? 6, teams need to collaborate. Cost optimization is incremental and goes back to the FinOps principle to say teams need to collaborate. You start crawling, walk, and run together. And last but not least, come to the point, unchallenged success leads to assumptions. And here a centralized team that drives DevOps, FinOps is very, very important here. Okay, so we covered the cultural parts. Again, sound very easy. But is, in my opinion, the biggest one. Let's tackle some of the technical parts. Jan did a great job this morning going really, really deep into the AWS part, so I just took out some of my stuff and reduced it to say, okay, all of us working with Lambdas know the situation, so reducing Lambda memory and execution timeouts, this was something we found out, helped a lot our customers. Another one was the runtime environment. So choosing a different runtime environment, again, could lead to some rewriting, some bigger things. So it's not that easy to say, hey, just switch your runtime. But choosing a different runtime, for example, Go, I know there's also Rust going on, over, for example, Node.js can also lead to shorter times, shorter memory consumptions, which then really pays also off depending on which scale you're operating. Another thing we saw quite often was some folks have specific series in their head to say, okay, this is the way we always choose the VM or the underlying node machine, some specific series in head like the T1. So please avoid this if you don't have any specific reason. Think about the whole VM family tree and see, okay, what makes sense here. Another one, Jan mentioned this also, and I am also highly advocating for this, is choose a Graviton instance over classical AMD or Intel architecture. Yes, it would mean maybe adapting your application and see if the application can handle this, but it still gives you better performance, better output with some things to keep in mind. But I would always try to choose a Graviton instance. And then there are some other things like to say, okay, stick with the 70-30 rule when it comes to memory. And I mentioned this again with the prices in the different regions. So, oh, this is an empty slide. This should not be. Okay. Next point is when we go a little bit with the customers, sometimes they have the fear that they are doing a vendor login. That was also something. So they try really hard to be cloud agnostic. So this is something we try to say, okay, don't do this. So if you stick to the cloud, please try to get the most out of the cloud provider, the offering you get from the cloud provider, because being pseudo cloud agnostic leads to increased effort, increased costs, which may be not necessary. Because now here comes the point. Your competitor may doesn't care about this. So when the competitor says, okay, I don't care about this cloud agnostic part, I want to deliver value to my business, I want to deliver value, I want to grow, I really go full in with the cloud services, for example, AWS is offering me, then they have now an advantage over you because you take much more time because you think like, oh, maybe next week I'm going to change to a different cloud provider, except you have a multi-cloud strategy. And another one is, we hear this all the time when you go to specific events and so on, Kubernetes. Kubernetes, it's going to sell like, hey, Kubernetes is the way to go. And there was a time when CTOs and developers or the operations people come back from conferences and they just wanted to use Kubernetes. So we call this CV-driven development or CV-driven deployment, where you just want to get your hands on Kubernetes, even if it's not your use case. So we tell them, hey, have a look. Do you really want to get the complexity on the added operational costs for running a Kubernetes cluster or multiple Kubernetes cluster with all the stuff coming on top of it for no reason? So please evaluate your strategy, your runtime strategy, and check if Kubernetes is the way to go or something else like a Fargate or App Runner. Avoid idle resources. Yes, of course. Caching. Caching is very, very important. So we could see when using caching strategies that you can reduce the excessive access to specific AWS service, and this saves you a lot of money also. Another point is deleting abandoned resources. We had it here. So having an idea what resources are running up and running and see if they're still used is also a point. There are ways to do this technically. There are many, many tools giving you the information. And last but not least, don't forget about the total cost of ownership, because this is something you sometimes forgot. We mentioned Kubernetes, for example. Yeah, Kubernetes maybe in a managed service is handlebar, but you need to train the people, you need to take updates, you need to consider the situation, upgrading all your application when a new API comes out, when a breaking API change happens, and so on and so on. So this is something to keep in mind, and sometimes we forgot about this, that a solution created can lead to excessive costs. With all the tips, it should feel normally like this. So saving your money, you should feel like a boss when you save money, when you implement some of the things I mentioned here. And now we come to the point what people always ask to say, okay, what tools did we recommend? So of course we have Cost Explorer, we have budget. So I tried here really to choose tools you have easy access to. Trust Advisor, CloudWatch, and so on. And you could see there's a little mascot of Pulumi coming up. So hey, you could also use Pulumi to create your infrastructure as code, and then you have an eye on which infrastructure you deployed and which is not deployed. And if you need to delete one, go to your infrastructure as code. It's also happened with AWS CDK and Terraform. So I just mentioned this, the fairness. And some OSS tools you can use is, for example, OpenCost and Commissar. And with this said, I'm open for questions. And if you don't have questions, I'm going to do this. But no, first questions. Then I will switch to no questions to this one. So thanks a lot for. Oh, there's a question. Is this a question? Ah, yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for joining. Oh. Thank you. Oh.
I had a
Thank
question.
you. Teşekkür.
I think there's one question.
I had a question.
Oh, wait, then.
Orada.
Okay.
You said like we don't need to like we need to avoid cloud agnosticism, if I'm not wrong, right? But can you elaborate it more? Because I think it's not a big trade-off. I think at the end of the day, what you're doing is adding just another abstraction layer to, you know, the way you get your inputs and then deliver your outputs. I think, I mean, or if I'm wrong, please correct me.
I mean,
Thank you.
it depends now the level of so-called vendor login you're having now. So we have cases where people actively refuse, for example, using lambdas and all this stuff. They say, no, that's too specific here for this use case. We would like to use something else. So it really depends which services are more tied to the specific cloud provider, which takes you more than 1 or 2 sprints to change the decision. So this is the thing. And I always, and this sounds maybe a little bit controversial, say, okay, if you don't need this, if your strategy for the next 2 years for this product, for this thing, there is no change planned, so go in all. Maybe in 2 years you deprecate the whole application and rebuild it from scratch. So why do you spend time now on something on a level which increases your costs by creating, maintaining and all this stuff? So that's the idea behind this, to say don't be afraid of going all in, because, yeah, there's maybe no reason for this to fear. Does it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
There's another one here.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just rephrase. Some people just hear about the Kubernetes and they want to use it. So how do you communicate that with some CTOs, maybe less technical people? How do you stumble upon that?
That's a really good question, because what is the reason behind this? What is your business reason you're doing this? So what boundaries did you hit with your current implementation to say, okay, we come now to a place we need to grow out? So did we already started with App Runner or with Fargate or something like this? Did we reach the maturity? When they come straight like this and you already have access to all the services, to say, okay, then there should be a really good reason for this, to say, okay, we need Kubernetes, we want to use GitOps, we want whatever things coming on top of it. When there is no reason for this, there is no shame to not use it. But you need to check this. So then the people, there comes the other point, they implement Kubernetes, but badly. And then they suffer also on this, because they increase the time of new releases. The support for older versions are not there. And then the worst case is you are stuck on an older version of Kubernetes. There's a heavy lifting for changing the stuff. You know what cloud providers do? I don't say name. They pay that, you pay a leg and an arm for keeping the old version up and running and so on. So this is a thing. But if you reach the maturity level and your team is already nice working with Kubernetes and so on, so maybe then it's easier. Then you can say, okay, I already have it, everything scales, so I can now do a static application also on Kubernetes. But as long as the space is not there, you may end up becoming slower and so on, and in a world where we compete with other companies, this could be an advantage they have over you, because they're like, I don't care. So that's the thing. So I always talk with the people, and we have many persons, they are really hot to play the Kubernetes game and so on, to say, okay, I know that everybody wants to do this, it's nice for the CV, we may find a new job and so on, but think about this, and are you aware of this? And the bigger the enterprise it gets, the more complicated it gets, because you not always have the top performers in your company. So that's always also a problem, how to enable them. Okay. I think there's another question.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good question. I like more the questioning.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that we should avoid job. Could you hear me?
I don't know if it's the micro I hear or just...
Hello?
yeah, now
Okay.
it's better. Okay.
You mentioned that we should avoid jumping to Kubernetes. I have to admit, I felt a bit betrayed over there. But at what point would you say would you say we should jump towards Kubernetes? If you have any specific examples.
And this is something, I think I had it here. Here, law number 2. Decisions are driven by the business value. This is also a thing. So there's the technical part when you grow out of your existing structure, because you discovered now that maybe it increases the prices and you make the calculations. And what is the use case? Why you're hitting the border now? So did you all the stuff in your current implementation that you say, okay, all the things lead to Kubernetes? I hope this is answering your question. So it's always getting the deeper understanding of the situation, seeing where you want to go, and then find out, okay, why is there this, why is Kubernetes here the solution? I'm not saying don't do it, I just say do it with a reason, because we're working not, I mean, it's not an NGO we're working in a company who needs to make money, who needs to get things sold or whatever, so keeping this in mind, and then we hit here the laws, which really fits very well. I hope that makes sense.
You.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Is there a question? I think it's not. Okay, thank you for the presentation.
Okay, then I'm gone now. Thank you.